Welcome back. This is the second lecture for week 2, and we're going to be, now that we've covered the difference between real property and personal property, we're going to talk about some elements of real property ownership. Now, if you own real property, you have certain rights regarding that property. You have the right to possession. You have the right, and that means you have the right to be there, to do what you want, well, within the law, to do what you want while you're there, and to exclude all others if you want from your property. You have the right to use the property as you wish, within the limits of the law, of course, and this includes the airspace above the land, as well as the minerals below the land, and the water on or under the land. Next and third, you have the right to dispose of the land. And what that means is you have the right to get rid of it, basically by selling or giving it away. So, if you own real property, you have the right to possess it to the exclusion of all others, the right to use it, and the right to dispose of it. So possession, let's color this up a little bit, use, and disposal. Now, how do you get real property? There are 5 methods of acquiring real property. You could inherit it. Let's do our lists all the same way, shall we? Inheritance. Now, the word inheritance refers to when someone dies without a will. This is known as intestate succession. If you took my probate law class, you'll remember the joys of intestate succession. If somebody dies without a will, their real property passes to their heirs by the rules of intestate succession. 2, a devise is when someone dies with a will. And the will tells the court who the property goes to. You could receive it as a gift, and that speaks for itself. You could receive it through a contract and sale of the land, so you've paid for it. And last, you can receive it through adverse possession. This is one of the favorite topics that people usually have. Adverse possession is such an interesting concept because basically what it means is you can go onto somebody else's property, and if you stay there long enough trespassing, the courts are going to reward you with giving you ownership of the land. And it actually is the law of the land. It is the case that if you go and you sit on somebody else's property for long enough, you will become the new owner, the adverse possessor. Now, it may seem like such a strange concept, and I think it is a strange concept to most of us because it doesn't seem right that you can go and break the law and then the law is going to reward you by giving you this property. But the reason for this is because our government doesn't want people going around buying up large pieces of land and then not using them in any way. It's not fair to the rest of us if some rich guy, let's say Donald Trump, he's in the news, so he's the richest guy on my mind. Okay, Bill Gates, we'll say Bill Gates. Bill Gates goes and buys up all of Montana. And then nobody else can live there because he owns all the property. He's the only one with the right to possess, use, and dispose of the land. Well, that's not fair. There's no way that he can possess, use, and dispose of all of that land. It's not fair. So our government has set up this idea of adverse possession, and that is that if somebody owns land and they are not using it in any way, but there's somebody else who needs it and is using it, is willing to use it, then the courts are going to reward that person. So how do you acquire land by adverse possession? In Michigan, well, I'll back up and say that the requirements for adverse possession are openly, actually possessing, exclusively possessing the land for a statutory period of time. So this word statutory means that the legislature of each state will determine the period of time and set it in that state's adverse possession statute. So in Michigan, the period is 15 years. So you can go up to the UP, find yourself a little plot of land that nobody else is on, and build you a little house. And if you live there for 15 years, the state of Michigan will say that that land is now yours. Now, that's the law of the land, and it actually works. But a lot of people aren't quite comfortable with just saying, well, I own my land by adverse possession. So there's another method that you can use, and it's called a quiet title action. A quiet title action, let me back up a little bit. With adverse possession, there's no written record of you owning that land. The quiet title action gives the adverse possessor a deed. Gives the adverse possessor a deed. So what happens is the quiet title action means you go to the courthouse, you tell the judge, I've been living on this land. Tell the judge you're an adverse possessor. We'll just say AP. And basically you are suing the world, challenging anyone to step forward and defend their right to that land. If nobody steps forward and can show that you weren't on that land for 15 years, if nobody can prove you wrong, the judge grants you a deed. So if no one can prove you wrong, the judge grants you a deed. Now a deed is the written piece of paper that says, I am the owner of this land. Okay, what else do I need to say about this? The original owner may hear about the quiet title action and want to come and defend his right to the land. If you can show the judge that you lived there for 15 years, openly, actually, and exclusively lived there for 15 years without the person's permission, of course. Now, you know, if you had the person's permission, that doesn't count. You have to be living there without the person's permission. And different states differ on whether or not the person could know about it. Like, I might be living on your land and you don't know about it. Some states that counts. Some states the other person had to know about it. It's complicated. But anyway, you don't need to know all that. What you need to know is the adverse possessor has to prove to the judge that they've been openly, actually, and exclusively living on that land for 15 years in Michigan. The original owner can come and say, yeah, that's true, they were, but it's still my land. And the judge is going to say, nope, you let them live there for 15 years, or they lived there for 15 years without you doing anything about it, so it's now their land. So pretty cool, huh? The adverse possession does not work with government land. And also, there's this concept called tacking that you need to know about. Tacking means the adverse possessor could live on the land for 5 years and then go and spend some time with his relatives at the beach for 2 years. And then come back. If he spends 10 more years, that will count as 15 years. So tacking means the time is added together. So even if they left the land for a period of time and then came back, the time is added together. Or if two separate adverse possessors possess the land for less than the statutory time, but it adds up to the statutory time. The time adds up to 15 years. Then they get to add their time together. So that's tacking. And that's an important concept for you to understand. All right, so I think that's it for elements of real property ownership.